Captain Jake Morrison stood in his small office aboard the mining ship New Frontier when the message arrived. The blue hologram flickered to life above his desk, showing symbols he had never seen before. The universal translator worked slowly to convert the alien text into words he could understand. As the meaning became clear, Jake felt his heart skip a beat. The Galactic Mining Consortium was inviting humanity to participate in the first interspecies mining competition. Jake read the message 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. 12 different alien races would compete on the mineral-rich moon of Kepler 442c. The winner would get exclusive mining rights to 3 entire star systems. For a species like humanity that had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago, this was huge. Jake called his crew to the main meeting room. Chief Engineer Lisa Bennett arrived first, wiping grease from her hands with an old rag. She had been working on their primary drill again. The machine was 20 years old and needed constant repairs, but it was all they had. Geologist Pete Williams came next, carrying his tablet full of mineral surveys from their last job. Operations Specialist Amy Carter was last to arrive. She had been calculating fuel costs for their next mining run. Jake showed them the invitation and watched their faces change from curiosity to disbelief. Lisa was the first to speak, asking if this was some kind of joke. Pete shook his head, saying he had heard rumors about this competition but never thought humans would be invited. Amy pulled up information about the other competing species on her tablet. What she found made everyone quiet. The Zephyrians had quantum drill arrays that could phase through solid rock like it was not there. Their technology was so advanced they could extract minerals without even touching the surface. The crystalline Vorthak used harmonic resonance extractors that sang rock formations apart at the molecular level. The machine-like Nexari deployed molecular disassemblers that could break down any obstacle into basic atoms and rebuild it as needed. Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. She pointed to their equipment bay where their basic seismic hammers sat alongside conventional drills. That looked ancient compared to what they had just read about. Pete agreed, saying their tools would look like Stone Age implements next to alien technology. Amy ran calculations showing they would be completely outmatched in every possible way. Jake understood their concerns, but something inside him refused to give up. He told his crew that humanity had been underestimated before and had always found a way to surprise everyone. Lisa argued that this was different because they were not just behind in technology, but behind by thousands of years. The aliens had been mining across the galaxy while humans were still figuring out how to get off their own planet. Pete brought up another problem, which was that they knew nothing about the geology of Kepler 442c. The moon was famous for being difficult to mine, with unpredictable rock formations and unstable mineral veins. Many mining companies had tried and failed to extract anything valuable from its surface. Now they were expected to compete against species that had been studying this moon for decades. Amy showed them videos of previous alien mining operations, and the technology was beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Massive drill platforms that could bore through kilometers of rock in hours. Energy weapons that could vaporize entire mountains. Gravity manipulators that could move billion-ton boulders like they were pebbles. The crew spent hours debating whether they should even respond to the invitation. Lisa worried they would embarrass not just themselves, but all of humanity. Pete was concerned about the safety risks of operating on an alien moon with inadequate equipment. Amy calculated that the cost of transportation alone would use up most of their savings, but Jake had made up his mind. He told his crew that win or lose, they had to represent humanity with pride. Even if they came in last place, they would show the galaxy that humans were not afraid of a challenge. Lisa sighed and said she would start preparing their equipment for transport. Pete began downloading everything he could find about Kepler 442c geology. Amy started planning their supply needs for the journey. Over the next few days, word spread through human space about the mining competition. Most people thought Jake and his crew were crazy for accepting the invitation. Government officials tried to talk them out of it, saying a poor showing would hurt humanity's reputation in the galactic community. Mining corporations offered to Sponsor them, but only if they agreed to use experimental human technology that had never been tested. Jake refused all offers of help. He wanted to compete with standard human mining equipment to show what ordinary humans could accomplish. Lisa worked day and night getting their old machines ready for the competition. Pete studied geological reports until his eyes hurt. Amy managed logistics for the most important mission of their lives. The journey to Kepler 442c took 2 weeks through hyperspace. During the trip, they practiced with their equipment and studied everything they could about their alien competitors. The more they learned, the more impossible their tasks seemed. But Jake reminded his crew that impossible things happened every day and humans had a talent for making the impossible possible. When they finally arrived at Kepler 442c, Jake looked out at the barren moon surface and saw massive alien installations already under construction. Ships the size of cities hovered above the mining sites. Technology beyond human understanding was being assembled by creatures that looked nothing like humans. Their own small ship looked like a toy next to the alien vessels. Lisa stared at the alien equipment and whispered that they had no chance of competing with machines like that. Pete agreed, saying the geological challenges would be hard enough without being completely outmatched in technology. Amy calculated that some of the alien drilling platforms could extract more minerals in 1 hour than their entire operation could manage in a year, but Jake was not ready to give up before they even started. He reminded his crew that David had beaten Goliath with just a sling and a stone. Sometimes the smallest competitor could find advantages that the biggest ones missed. Lisa shook her head but began unloading their equipment anyway. Pete downloaded local geological data to his scanners. Amy coordinated with competition officials to register their participation. As they set up their simple mining camp, Jake noticed other species watching them with what looked like amusement. Some aliens were actually laughing at their basic equipment. A few competitors came over to examine their seismic hammers and conventional drills, like they were museum pieces from a primitive civilization. Jake felt his crew's confidence dropping with each alien reaction, but he kept working. Tomorrow the competition would begin and humanity would show the galaxy what humans could do with nothing but determination and the tools they had built with their own hands. The competition began at dawn with a thunderous sound that shook the entire moon. 12 different alien species activated their mining equipment simultaneously, and the noise was unlike anything Jake Morrison had ever heard. Quantum drills hummed with energy that made the air itself vibrate. Harmonic extractors sang notes so pure they could shatter crystal from a kilometer away. Molecular disassemblers created a crackling sound like continuous lightning strikes. Jake stood with his crew at the edge of their assigned sector watching the alien teams work. Each species had been given an identical square of moon surface measuring 10 kilometers on each side. The rules were simple, and everyone had 72 hours to extract as much trilithium crystal as possible. The team with the highest quantity and quality would win exclusive mining rights to 3-star systems worth more money than most planets made in a century. Lisa Bennett checked their equipment one final time, making sure their seismic hammers were calibrated correctly. The hammers looked primitive compared to the alien technology, but they were reliable and had served human miners well for decades. Pete Williams spread geological survey maps across a folding table and began studying the rock formations in their sector. Amy Carter coordinated with the competition judges to confirm their registration and make sure they understood all the rules. The Zephyrian team had already begun drilling, and their quantum arrays were phasing through solid rock like it was empty. Space. Jake watched their progress on the central monitoring system that showed all teams in real time. The Zephyrians were making incredible speed, descending through the moon's crust without any resistance. Their leader, Commander Vexel, stood proudly next to drilling platforms that cost more than entire human cities. The crystalline Vorthek had positioned their harmonic extractors in a perfect geometric pattern across their sector. When they activated the machines, the air filled with a sound so beautiful it almost made Jake forget they were in competition. The harmonic resonance found natural fractures in the rock and expanded them with mathematical precision. Within hours they had opened several deep shafts that revealed promising mineral veins. The machine-like Nexari deployed molecular disassemblers that reduced obstacles to component atoms and rebuilt them as needed. Jake watched in amazement as they disassembled a small mountain and reassembled it as a perfectly organized pile of different materials. Their efficiency was terrifying, and they worked without stopping for rest or maintenance. Other alien teams showed technology equally impressive. The floating ethereals used gravity manipulators to move massive boulders without touching them. The insectoid Chitauri had biomechanical drones that could tunnel through rock using acid secretions. The energy beings called Luminaries simply dissolved rock with focused light beams that cut through stone like butter. Meanwhile, the human team started with basic geological surveys using handheld scanners that looked ancient compared to alien equipment. Pete Williams walked slowly across their sector taking measurements and soil samples. Other teams were already reporting successful strikes on shallow crystal veins while Pete was still trying to understand the basic geology of their area. Lisa Bennett began setting up their seismic hammers in what looked like a random pattern to alien observers. The hammers were designed to create controlled vibrations that could reveal underground structures, but compared to quantum drills and molecular disassemblers, they seemed laughably inadequate. Several alien teams sent observers to watch the humans. Work and Jake could hear them making comments about primitive technology. Amy Cotta managed their communications with competition officials and kept track of other teams' progress. The monitoring system showed that most alien teams were already finding shallow deposits of trilithium crystal. The Zephyrians had extracted their first samples within 3 hours of starting. The Vorthak had located a major vein at 50 meters depth. Even the smallest alien teams were making progress that put human efforts to shame. Pete Williams made observations that seemed unimportant to others but caught his attention. The moon's surface showed unusual stress patterns that suggested complex geological activity beneath. Most teams were focusing on obvious surface indicators, but Pete noticed subtle signs that the real treasures might be much deeper than anyone expected. He also observed that the moon's magnetic field created strange interference patterns that might affect drilling operations. Jake felt frustration growing among his crew as hours passed without significant progress. Their basic equipment struggled with the tough surface rock that covered their sector. The seismic hammers created vibrations, but the readings were confusing and difficult to interpret. Lisa worked hard to adjust their settings, but progress remained slow compared to alien teams that were advancing rapidly toward deeper deposits. The competition judges toured all sectors during the first day, and their reactions to human methods were mixed. Some seemed genuinely curious about seismic hammer technology they had never seen before. Others appeared concerned that humanity was wasting valuable time with inefficient approaches. A few judges from advanced species looked at human equipment with what seemed like pity. By the end of the first day, alien teams had established clear leads in crystal extraction. The Zephyrians had pulled up several high-quality samples from depths of 200 meters. The Vorthak had opened multiple shafts revealing extensive crystal formations. The Nexari had systematically disassembled and catalogued every mineral in their sector's upper layers. Jake's team had managed to penetrate only 30 meters into their surface using conventional drilling methods. Their seismic surveys had revealed interesting geological patterns, but no actual crystal deposits. Lisa estimated they were falling behind at a rate that would make victory impossible even if they worked perfectly for the remaining time. That evening, alien teams celebrated their progress with elaborate displays of technology and culture. The Zephyrians projected holographic sculptures showing their drill paths through the moon. The Vorthak performed harmonic compositions that told the story of successful mining operations. The Nexari displayed statistical analyses proving their superior efficiency. The human team sat around their small camp eating simple food and reviewing data from their first day. Pete Williams studied his geological readings and noticed patterns that seemed important but were hard to explain. The moon's structure was more complex than initial surveys had suggested. Natural stress points existed throughout the crust, creating a network of potential weak spots that conventional mining wisdom said were too small to matter. Lisa Bennett maintained their equipment and prepared for another day of slow progress. Their seismic hammers were working correctly, but the results were not impressive compared to alien achievements. Amy Carter calculated that they would need to increase their extraction rate by over 1,000% to have any chance of winning. Jake Morrison looked up at the alien stars above Kepler 442c and refused to give up hope. Human history was full of situations where everything seemed impossible until someone found a different way to approach the problem. Tomorrow they would continue working with their simple tools and maybe discover something that advanced technology had missed. As the first day ended, alien teams prepared for accelerated operations during day 2. Their powerful equipment had overcome the moon's initial resistance, and deeper drilling would bring greater rewards. The human team prepared for another day of patient work with basic tools, hoping that persistence and understanding might eventually overcome raw technological power. The second day brought new challenges as alien teams pushed deeper into the moon's crust. Jake Morrison watched the progress monitors and saw that several species were hitting harder rock layers that slowed their advance. The Zephyrian's quantum drills were still effective but required more energy to maintain their phasing effect. The Vorthic's harmonic extractors began interfering with each other as they worked closer together in confined spaces. Pete Williams spent the early morning studying overnight data from their seismic hammers. The vibrations had continued working while the team slept, and the readings showed something interesting. The moon's geology was more active than anyone had realized. Tidal forces from the nearby planet created rhythmic stress patterns that moved through the rock like slow waves. Most geological surveys missed these patterns because they happened over periods of hours rather than minutes. Lisa Bennett calibrated their equipment for a different approach based on Pete's findings. Instead of drilling directly down like other teams, they would use seismic hammers to create synchronized vibrations across their entire sector. The idea seemed crazy because it meant abandoning conventional mining wisdom, but Pete's data suggested the moon's natural harmonics could be exploited in ways that raw drilling power could not match. Amy Carter calculated the precise timing needed to synchronize their seismic hammers with the moon's natural frequency patterns. The mathematics were complex, but the concept was simple. If they could match the rhythm of the moon's internal stress cycles, they might be able to create resonance effects that would amplify their efforts far beyond what their equipment should. Normally accomplished. Jake authorized the unconventional approach, even though it meant taking a huge risk. If Pete's theory was wrong, they would waste precious time that could have been spent on conventional mining methods. But if the theory was correct, they might find a way to compete with alien technology using nothing but understanding of natural forces. The alien teams noticed that humans were not drilling in the expected pattern, and some began to openly mock their methods. Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrians sent observers to watch the human operation and report back on their strange activities. The observers saw humans spreading seismic hammers across the surface in seemingly random locations and activating them in coordinated sequences. To alien eyes, the human approach looked like they were playing some kind of percussion instrument, rather than conducting serious mining operations. Several species sent messages to competition judges, expressing concern that humanity was wasting valuable time with primitive rituals instead of actual extraction work. The judges reviewed human activities but found no violations of competition rules. Lisa Bennett worked tirelessly to maintain the rhythmic hammering pattern that Pete had calculated. Each hammer had to activate at precisely the right moment to create constructive interference with vibrations from other locations. The timing was critical because even small errors would disrupt the resonance pattern they were trying to establish. The Nexari team achieved significant success during the second day by systematically disassembling rock layers and sorting materials with mechanical precision. Their molecular disassemblers worked without fatigue or error, processing tons of material every hour. But they began encountering problems when they reached rock formations with unusual mineral compositions that their programming had not anticipated. Crystal and Vorthik discovered that their harmonic extractors were creating unexpected interactions in the confined spaces of deep shafts. Harmonic frequencies that worked perfectly on the surface became chaotic when reflected off tunnel walls. Several of their most advanced extractors overloaded and required emergency shutdowns for repairs. Other alien teams experienced similar problems as their powerful equipment encountered geological challenges that had not appeared in initial surveys. The floating ethereals found that gravity manipulation became unreliable at depths where the moon's core exerted stronger influence. The insectoid Chitauri discovered that their biomechanical drones were affected by radiation from mineral deposits that had not been detected from orbit. Meanwhile, the human seismic hammers continued their steady rhythm, creating a network of micro-vibrations that spread through the rock like ripples in water. The effect was subtle at first, but Pete's geological sensors detected stress fractures, beginning to propagate along natural fault lines. The moon was responding to their rhythmic stimulation by releasing tension that had been building for millions of years. Jake felt excitement growing as he watched their seismic readings. The vibrations were not just randomly shaking rock, but following predictable paths through the moon's internal structure. Pete's understanding of natural stress patterns was proving correct, and the synchronized hammering was amplifying forces that already existed rather than trying to overpower the moon's resistance. Lisa Bennett maintained the complex timing sequence. Despite growing fatigue from the precise work required, each hammer had to be adjusted constantly as conditions changed and the resonance patterns evolved. It was like conducting an orchestra where every instrument had to play in perfect harmony with geological forces that moved at their own ancient pace. By the end of the second day, alien teams were reporting mixed results. Some had achieved impressive extraction rates in the upper layers but were struggling with deeper geology. The Zephyrians had extracted moderate amounts of trilithium, but their quantum drills were overheating from constant high-energy operation. The Vorthak had opened multiple shafts, but crystal quality was lower than expected due to harmonic interference. The human team had not extracted any trilithium crystals yet, but their seismic network was creating effects that registered on monitoring equipment across the entire mining site. Other teams began to notice unusual seismic activity coming from the human sector, but dismissed it as irrelevant to the actual mining competition. Pete Williams studied real-time data showing how stress fractures were spreading through their sectors. Geology. The pattern was beautiful in its mathematical precision as natural forces found release through pathways that had been waiting for the right trigger. He calculated that they were approaching a critical threshold where accumulated vibrations would cause dramatic changes in the rock structure. Amy Carter coordinated with competition judges to ensure that their unconventional methods remained within established rules. Several alien teams had filed complaints suggesting that human seismic activity was somehow interfering with their operations. The judges investigated but found no evidence of rule violations or deliberate interference. Jake Morrison felt confident that their approach was working even though they had no crystals to show for their efforts. The seismic readings told a story of geological forces building toward a moment of release that would make conventional drilling look primitive. Pete's understanding of natural harmonics was about to prove that sometimes the simplest approach guided by knowledge could achieve what the most advanced technology could not. As the second day ended, alien teams prepared for intensive extraction. During the final day, their powerful equipment had overcome most obstacles and they expected to maximize their crystal yields through concentrated effort. The human team prepared for what Pete predicted would be a breakthrough that would change everything they thought they knew about mining on Kepler-442c. The moon itself seemed to be waiting for the right moment to reveal secrets that had been hidden beneath its surface for geological ages. Tomorrow would determine whether human intuition about natural forces could compete with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The third day began with what seemed like an earthquake, but Pete Williams knew better. The accumulated vibrations from their seismic hammers had reached the critical threshold he had calculated, and the moon was responding exactly as his geological models predicted. Stress fractures that had been building pressure for millions of years suddenly found release, creating massive fissures that opened like flowers blooming in fast motion. Jake Morrison felt the ground shake beneath his feet and watched in amazement as cracks appeared across their entire sector. But these were not random breaks in the rock. The fissures followed the precise patterns that Pete had mapped using his understanding of natural stress lines. The moon was not breaking apart but opening pathways that led directly to its deepest treasures. Lisa Bennett stopped the seismic hammers as the geological transformation continued without any additional stimulation needed. The rhythmic vibrations had triggered a cascade effect that now sustained itself through natural forces. Rock layers that had resisted alien drilling for days were peeling away like old paint, revealing crystal formations beneath that sparkled with reflected sunlight. The seismic activity was so dramatic that it triggered monitoring alarms across the entire mining site. Competition judges rushed to the human sector expecting to find equipment damage or safety violations. Instead, they discovered that controlled geological forces were exposing trilithium deposits that were larger and purer than anything other teams had found using conventional methods. Amy Carter coordinated emergency communications with competition officials to confirm that the geological changes were completely natural and not caused by explosives or unauthorized equipment. The judges ran extensive scans but found only basic human mining tools and seismic hammers that operated within all established parameters. Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrians demanded immediate inspection of the human operation, convinced that they must be using hidden technology. He brought scanning equipment that could detect quantum signatures, energy emissions, and molecular disruption patterns. But every test confirmed that humans were achieving unprecedented results using nothing but simple vibration tools and understanding of natural forces. The massive fissures revealed crystal formations that took Jake's breath away. Trilithium deposits extended deep into the moon following geological patterns that no surface survey could have detected. The crystals were not just abundant but perfectly formed without the stress fractures that typically resulted from aggressive extraction methods. Other alien teams watched from their sectors as humans descended into naturally formed caverns using basic rope and pulley systems. The caverns were like underground cathedrals filled with crystal formations that had grown undisturbed for millions of years. Human miners with simple hand tools could harvest these crystals without the damage caused by high-energy alien equipment. Pete Williams marveled at the geological forces they had unleashed through patient understanding rather than brute force. The moon had been waiting for someone to listen to what it was trying to say. Instead of fighting against natural resistance, they had worked with existing stress patterns to convince the moon to reveal its secrets willingly. The Vorthak team tried to adapt their harmonic extractors to work with the new geological conditions, but their equipment was designed for controlled environments, not the chaotic acoustics of natural caverns. Their precise frequencies became distorted by irregular surfaces, causing equipment malfunctions that required constant repairs. The Nexari attempted to deploy molecular disassemblers in the human sector, but found that their programming could not adapt to geological changes happening faster than their analysis systems could process. Their machines were designed to impose order on static environments, not to respond to dynamic natural forces. Lisa Bennett organized extraction teams that worked carefully to preserve crystal quality while maximizing harvest yields. Their basic tools were perfectly suited for delicate work in confined spaces, where alien machinery would have caused destructive interference. Human flexibility and adaptability proved more valuable than automated precision. The competition judges struggled to understand how primitive human technology had achieved results that surpassed the most advanced alien equipment. Jake Morrison explained that they had not overpowered the moon but had listened to its natural rhythms and found ways to work in harmony with forces that were already present. Amy Carter calculated that their crystal extraction rate had increased by over 10,000% once the natural fissures opened. The trilithium deposits were not only more abundant than expected but higher quality because they had been exposed through gentle geological processes rather than violent drilling methods. The floating ethereals tried to use gravity manipulation to access the new crystal formations but found that their equipment interfered with the delicate balance of forces that kept the fissures stable. Several attempts to extract crystals using alien technology resulted in cavern collapses that buried valuable deposits under tons of rubble. Pete Williams studied the ongoing geological changes and realized that the process was still evolving. New fissures continued opening as stress patterns found release through pathways that had been created by their initial seismic stimulation. The moon was essentially mining itself once the proper conditions had been established. Jake felt pride in his crew's achievement but also humility before the natural forces they had helped unleash. The competition had become less about technology and more about understanding the fundamental principles that govern geological processes. Humans had succeeded not because their tools were better, but because their approach was wiser. The insectoid Chitauri attempted to send biomechanical drones into the human caverns, but found that their acid secretions reacted unpredictably with the exposed crystal formations. Several drones were lost when chemical reactions caused tunnel collapses that trapped the machines beyond recovery. Lisa Bennett coordinated with safety teams to ensure that human workers could operate safely in the unstable geological environment. Their experience with dangerous mining conditions on Earth had prepared them for challenges that alien teams had never encountered because their advanced technology usually eliminated such risks. By midday, the human team had extracted more trilithium than all other teams combined. Their crystals were not only more numerous but also higher quality because the natural extraction process had preserved their molecular structure. Competition judges confirmed that human samples met all purity standards and exceeded requirements for commercial applications. The Luminari energy beings tried to use focused light beams to extract crystals from the new formations but found that their energy discharges destabilized the geological structures that supported the cavern systems. Their powerful technology was too crude for the delicate work required in naturally formed crystal environments. Amy Carter maintained communication with all alien teams, offering to share geological data that might help them adapt their methods to the changing conditions. Some species accepted the information gratefully while others refused help from what they still considered primitive human technology. Pete Williams continued monitoring seismic activity and predicted that the geological changes would continue for several more hours before stabilizing. The moon was releasing tension that had accumulated over geological timescales, and the process could not be rushed or controlled by any technology. Jake Morrison realized that they had discovered something more valuable than trilithium crystals. The principle of working with natural forces rather than against them could revolutionize mining operations throughout the galaxy. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs came not from building more powerful tools but from developing deeper understanding of the world around them. As the third day continued, human miners worked carefully in crystal caverns that seemed to extend forever into the moon's depths. The simple seismic hammers had accomplished what quantum drills and molecular disassemblers could not by convincing the moon itself to become their partner in the extraction process. The final hours of the competition brought results that no one had expected when the mining contest began 3 days earlier. Jake Morrison stood at the edge of the massive fissure that split their sector and watched human miners carefully harvesting trilithium crystals from formations that seemed to go on forever. The natural caverns revealed by their seismic work contained more high-quality crystals than most mining operations extracted in years of conventional drilling. The competition judges arrived for final measurements, and their scanning equipment confirmed what everyone could see with their eyes. The human team had extracted over 40 tons of pristine trilithium crystal while maintaining quality standards that exceeded galactic commercial requirements. No other team had managed to extract even 10 tons, and most of their samples showed stress damage from aggressive extraction methods. Lisa Bennett supervised the careful loading of crystal samples onto transport platforms using basic mechanical equipment that looked primitive compared to alien technology. But their simple tools had proven perfect for delicate work in confined spaces where advanced machinery would have caused destructive interference with the natural formations. Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrians requested permission to examine the human extraction site one final time. He brought his most advanced scanning equipment and spent hours analyzing every aspect of their operation. His quantum sensors detected no hidden technology, no energy signatures that could explain how basic seismic hammers had achieved such extraordinary results. Pete Williams guided the Zephyrian commander through the crystal caverns, explaining how understanding natural geological forces had made their success possible. He showed how stress patterns in the moon's crust had been waiting for millions of years for the right stimulus to release accumulated tension through controlled fracturing. The crystalline Vorthak sent their senior harmonic engineer to study human methods, hoping to understand how simple vibrations had accomplished what their sophisticated resonance extractors could not. Their engineer was amazed to learn that humans had worked with the moon's natural frequencies rather than trying to impose artificial harmonics on resistant geological structures. Amy Carter coordinated with competition officials to document their extraction methods for the permanent record. The judges wanted detailed analysis of human techniques because the results challenged fundamental assumptions about mining technology. Simple tools guided by understanding had outperformed the most advanced equipment in the galaxy. The machine-like Nexari submitted formal protests claiming that human methods must violate competition rules because primitive technology could not logically achieve such superior results. Their protests were investigated thoroughly, but judges found that humans had used only approved equipment and had worked entirely within established parameters. Jake Morrison addressed the closing ceremony with humility and respect for the natural forces they had learned to work with rather than against. He explained that human success came not from superior technology but from willingness to listen to what the environment was trying to teach them about more effective approaches to extraction challenges. The Galactic Mining Consortium officials struggled to understand how their fundamental assumptions about mining efficiency had been proven wrong by species they had considered technologically primitive. The human approach of patient observation and harmonic cooperation had revealed possibilities that brute force methods had completely missed. Lisa Bennett demonstrated their seismic hammer technology to representatives from multiple alien species who wanted to understand how such simple equipment could achieve unprecedented results. She explained that the hammers themselves were not special, but the way humans had learned to use them in cooperation with natural forces made all the difference. The competition results sparked heated debates throughout the galactic mining community. Advanced species that had relied on raw technological power for thousands of years were forced to reconsider whether they had been approaching extraction problems with the right philosophy. Human methods suggested that understanding natural systems might be more important than overpowering them. Pete Williams was invited to present his geological analysis to the Galactic Science Academy, where his theories about harmonic resonance with planetary stress patterns became the foundation for entirely new fields of study. Universities across the galaxy began developing programs to study what became known as cooperative extraction techniques. The floating ethereals formally requested human consultation on mining operations in their home system, where CONVENTIONAL gravity manipulation had been failing to extract resources from geologically complex asteroids. They offered substantial compensation for sharing knowledge about working with natural forces rather than against them. Amy Carter received offers from dozens of mining corporations wanting to hire human advisors who could teach their operations how to achieve better results through understanding rather than technology. The demand for human expertise grew so rapidly that she had to establish a consulting company to manage all the requests. The insectoid Chitauri adapted their biomechanical drones to work with geological patterns rather than against them and achieved extraction improvements of over 300% in their first test applications. Their success encouraged other species to experiment with cooperative approaches to resource extraction. Jake Morrison was awarded the competition prize in a ceremony, attended by representatives from all 12 participating species. But more important than the mining rights they had won was the respect humanity had earned as innovative problem solvers who could find solutions where others saw only obstacles. The Nexari eventually acknowledged that their molecular disassemblers had been designed with assumptions about optimal efficiency that proved incorrect when applied to complex natural systems. They began developing new equipment that could adapt to changing conditions rather than trying to impose predetermined patterns on resistant environments. Lisa Bennett established a training program for human miners who wanted to learn advanced seismic techniques for working with natural geological forces. The program became so popular that alien species began sending their own engineers to study what became known as the human approach to cooperative extraction. The Moon, Kepler 442c, became a permanent research site where scientists from across the galaxy studied the geological changes caused by human seismic stimulation. The natural fissures continued revealing new crystal formations for months after. The competition ended, proving that cooperative extraction could create sustainable long-term benefits. Pete Williams published his research on planetary stress patterns and harmonic resonance extraction in journals throughout the galaxy. His work became required reading for mining engineers who wanted to understand how natural forces could become partners rather than obstacles in resource extraction operations. Amy Carter's consulting company grew into a galactic corporation that specialized in teaching cooperative extraction techniques to mining operations throughout known space. Human expertise became so valuable that entire alien civilizations changed their approach to resource extraction based on principles learned from simple seismic hammers. The competition had begun with 12 species trying to prove their technological superiority through raw drilling power. It ended with the galaxy learning that sometimes the most advanced approach was also the most humble one. Working with natural forces rather than against them had proven more effective than any amount of sophisticated equipment. Jake Morrison looked back at their small mining ship New Frontier and realized that humanity had found something more valuable than trilithium crystals or mining rights. They had discovered that wisdom about natural systems could be more powerful than any technology, and that understanding the universe was often more effective than trying to conquer it through force.